episode 7 of the Boomer Bust podcast. 21 days to the NFL's back. We're getting closer to Thursday, 8th of September. Things are picking up, squads are taking shape, training's ramping up, everyone's just gearing up to that opening week. Kieran, my usual host, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I can't believe we're in episode 7 already. It's been fun. Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly, mate, exactly. We've got a guest tonight. It's the first ever, the inaugural Blackpool Donkey. The first one to finish last in our fantasy football league. It's Steve-O. Steve-O, how the devil are you?
I'm good, mate. Good to see it only took you about 10 seconds to bring that up. I was wondering how long it'd be.
It was straight into the script.
And I was expecting it, so no worries, man.
To be fair to Steve-O, was it not a runner-up place last year?
Aye, so...
Comeback player of the year.
It was, but there's one thing we have to bring up before. It's the last thing we'll mention of it. Steve-O, the forfeit was to go to Blackpool. This was now 2 years ago. COVID restrictions have been lifted. Have you been yet?
No yet, nah.
Right.
It's a pure show.
Is it on the agenda, or is it?
I had an idea for that, actually. Because it originally started because we were idea about a megabus trip with me.
Yeah.
And decided Blackpool. So what I was thinking is, next year for the international series, we should have a wee day out for everybody going to one of the games, and all the losers need to get the megabus in where you just can go down in luxury.
Oh, we'll get a limousine, man.
That's not a bad shout. Is there travel on the loser's coin, is it?
I may get some Ryanair or something for that. Aye.
Sounds like a plan.
That does sound like a good idea. I'd be right up for that.
I might regret that in a 12-hour journey to London in a megabus, but...
Aye, next to Tony, that sounds torture.
Anyway, Steve, we'll get right into it. We like to learn a bit about the guys that we bring on. So you're, as we can clearly see, a Saints fan. How did you start? There's always an interesting story. How did you start supporting the New Orleans Saints?
What it was, I was going to the international series back in 2008, I think it was, and it was the Saints, the Chargers. And all my mates were going down, and me and one of my mates kind of booked up late. And he was a Chargers fan, so it was basically just to wind him up. And the Saints won the game, and it was a quality game and all. And obviously Drew Brees was playing, so that kind of just got me into it, and it just took on from there.
Brilliant. That's actually the most normal story we've had, somebody supporting the team.
Toasties is still the best.
Oh, aye.
The Hardy Boys were from Charlotte, played a computer game, seen the NFL Madden, Charlotte, Carolina Panthers. So I support the Panthers, so no reason I joined to American football whatsoever.
Twisted logic. Anyway, Steve-O, what's your expectations for the season?
Well, I'm pretty confident. I mean, don't know about Super Bowl, but definitely playoffs. And maybe a deep run into playoffs. I think last year, obviously, the defence was brilliant, but the offence didn't really get going between, it was Winston and injuries, and then Taysom Hill, and it was a bit of a kind of Sean Payton trying to make something of it with Taysom Hill, trying to make him a good quarterback, but he just was never a good quarterback, so it just didn't really take off. And obviously, apart from Kamara, they had no weapons at all. But this year, with all the wide receivers they brought in, Landry, Olave, and then getting Thomas back, and hopefully if Winston stays fit as well, it looks like it could be good, but we'll wait and see.
I'll go to Kieran on this one. Kieran, is there anybody in the Saints that really you're looking at for your fantasy teams, that you think's relevant? Michael Thomas, Kamara, Olave, any of the guys that Steve-O mentioned that you'd be thinking about?
I think the one name that stands out there for obvious reasons is Alvin Kamara. When we look at the news that came out about him, of his suspension, it looks like it's going to be pushed forward to next season, or pushed back, should I say, to next season. So it could sway people. Without that suspension, and his current ADP is number 17, he's a top-tier running back. Nothing changes in that sense, especially for full PPR. He's a pass-catching running back, which means a lot in terms of every point you're getting for every catch, and his rushing yards as well. So 6 full games last season with Jameis Winston, under centre. He was RB5 in fantasy, averaging 23.2 touches and 5.5 targets every game, over 25% target share. He's very, very high on the list of running backs, within your draft. So Alvin Kamara for me, if he falls at me, I'm pick number 9, I'm going to take him. ADP at 17, with the news that suspension now looks like the 2022 season. There's very little chance that I'm going to get him. No doubt at all. If he falls to you, you've got to take him. Yep. Over and above, if you've already seen guys like Jonathan Taylor and Derek Henry go, of course. But yeah, Kamara, still the man in fantasy for me.
Steve, anybody else that's not really been mentioned that you'd take?
I think one that's kind of everybody talks about, obviously Thomas coming back and Olave's a new one, but if you're getting to the later rounds, Jarvis Landry could be a bit of a wild card. He's obviously good history with the Browns and a good record there, and he definitely could do a job. Because a lot of the quarterbacks now will be watching Thomas and Olave, so Landry could get a lot of hits.
Yeah, I've got to agree there. We put a post up yesterday about him. He is going late in drafts. His experience at like the Dolphins and at the Browns, he's always been a very valuable option at wide receiver. And I think he could be a great ploy for guys like Chris Olave and Michael Thomas in that receiving course. So I wouldn't be surprised if Landry was a surprise package, if you could even call him that this season.
Well, guys, moving on. Let's look at the news this week. First of all, I think it was quite a slow news, but there is quite some stuff come out this week. First of all, I think we should touch on what's happening in the UK. It was announced that the NFL will be on ITV. ITV will take on 3 games this year, 2 of the NFL London games and 1 Super Bowl, plus a weekly highlight show. Kieran, what do you think about that? Got to be good news for exposure, the NFL in the UK.
Absolutely. It's a change. Laura Wood's coming in to present the show. She's been a lifelong NFL fan. She's got a good association with it. Osei and Jason Bell are a match made in heaven. If you've watched the show, been on the BBC and also listening to their podcast, they're a great laugh. The banter's good. A bit like ourselves on here, guys. But I'm really looking forward to it. Any exposure is good exposure for the NFL in the UK, which is a growing market, and we love to see it. So, yeah, happy with that. ITV also show Love Island, so I won't have to change the channel.
I think as well it makes people kind of might stumble upon it, or wouldn't really go out their way to go on Sky Sports to watch it. They might just kind of stumble out, they turn on their TV and it's on and they end up watching it. I think it's good for a lot of that side. And Steve, do you think stuff like this, do you think this will make a big difference in terms of UK viewers? I know it's already building, but you think this has got to be another positive step, isn't it, in terms of picking up more, probably casual viewers that could go on to then be passionate supporters?
Aye, definitely. I mean, you look at, as Kieran said, you mentioned Laura Woods, like she's obviously quite a big presenter between Sky and it's on TalkSport, the darts and all that, and even just her doing it was all over Twitter, the fact that she joined. So already you've got kind of people that maybe don't know too much about it. That'll kind of pique their interest a wee bit, and then that'll kind of build the following, as you say.
I go back to what you said as well, Shug. Like, people stumbling across it could be a big thing. I don't know what the script is with the setup and what time it's going to be on it, but I know the Saturday night show, or you could call it the early Sunday morning show, was usually about 1 o'clock after match of the day, which isn't convenient for folk that don't record it. It'd be good to see it at a more primetime slot that would give it more exposure and hopefully see more views.
Definitely. As you said, it gives you different faces and different coverage of it as well, and it's always positive, and they're obviously throwing a good bit of money. It's good presenters they're putting on it, so they obviously see it as important. They see it as a growing sport. Yeah,
always good to see improvement. It's always good to see progress in the UK for the NFL. I'll certainly be tuning in.
And going on to the kind of news that we've had recently, DeShaun Watson, now it's been moved, his suspension will now be 11 games. This looks as if, might be wrong in this, but it looks as if the saga's coming to an end. Now, we spoke before, we don't want to go too much into detail, but Steve-O, that's got to make him, surely that sort of makes him fantasy irrelevant.
Yeah, I think so. 11 games, so it's a 17-game season now, so it definitely will make him pretty much irrelevant. There's some, if it was 6 games, a lot of people might have stashed him, picked someone up later in the rounds and put him aside, but 11 games, by the time you get into that, you're almost at your fantasy playoffs, so it would be too much a risk to even bother trying to draft him late.
Yeah, Kieran, you agreeing on that one? I know it was something we spoke about that possibly you would take a punt on, but now is it kind of ruled out now?
I'm not so sure. I think in terms of it being relevant whatsoever, like Steve said there, your fantasy playoffs, he's coming back week 13 against, of all teams, the Texans. You're getting to that stage where it's your last 4 games, your playoffs, or if you're trying to find your way into that top 4, top 6, depending on how your leagues run, he might be a decent late pickup off the free agency, but I'm just not sure. Having to basically get into game sharpness and game form by that time, is he really? It's going to be a risk if you pick him up that late going into your playoffs. If you're already in your playoffs, do I believe that you would be there without a top tier quarterback? No, I don't. So I just don't get that it would be relevant at all. So yeah, I agree with Steve says. Playoff pickup, maybe, if you're struggling, if you pick up an injury to your quarterback that's got you there, possibly, but it would be a risk.
I agree. I think it might be somebody who just sneaks into the playoffs, maybe, or who's battling against Blackpool that might pick him up late on for the playoffs. And but as you said, by that stage, if you're doing well in the fantasy league, you're probably going to have 2 quarterbacks ahead of him. To be honest, you're going to have somebody back up that's going to be ahead. As you said, there's no guarantee. You come in after 11 games, season's already started. All right, you can do everything in the training, but it doesn't get you up to game speed.
Nah, I'd be surprised if he ripped up Treesy's first game back, especially when he's not played last season as well.
Yeah.
So, his relevance is gone, and I think it takes guys like Amari Cooper's value down, although he could be a good pickup. I think that was riding on the fact if Watson played. But I think it takes his value down as well, so stock down on both of them for me.
And outside, there's always injury news. Zach Wilson underwent knee surgery and a meniscus tear. It wasn't as bad, thankfully, as it first feared. Kieran, how do you see this affecting the fantasy value of the Jets offence?
I think it's going to have a big bearing, considering that Zach Wilson's had a history of knee problems going back 2 years now. It's now a clean-up of the meniscus. The reports come back to say that the surgery went well, and they say it's a 2 to 4 week surgery. It's a difficult one. Like, the Jets look like they're going to be the hot dark horse this season with some good pickups. Elijah Moore, especially having a great season last season. Zach Wilson, he's the reigning MVP without throwing a ball this season already, given his off-field antics. But it's difficult to say at the moment. I just don't know about a player that's already underwent surgery in pre-season with hopes of being back throughout the early games and being sharp right away.
And Steve-O, do you think Joe Flacco, do you think he can fill in for him, or are you kind of along the same lines of Kieran's thoughts?
Yeah, no, I doubt Joe Flacco will do too much. He's been out for years, and he had his time at one point, but it's well past now. And it's the reason why he's not on any other teams. So I think we've seen it last year. I think Flacco came in for a bit, Mike White came in for a bit, and Mike White went a bit crazy fantasy-wise for a couple of games, but it kind of fell away. So I can't see either one of them doing anything to help the wide receivers at the Jets pick up any points.
Yeah, and as Kieran said, Jets were kind of tipped to be sort of dark horses there. Is there anybody you'd still be thinking about taking? My kind of thoughts on the lines of Tyler Conklin at tight end. Breece Hall is what I was reading. It could be a good shout as well. Would you still look at anybody from that, or are you kind of a wee bit more hesitant now that the quarterback situation's a wee bit up there?
I'd say Breece Hall's definitely one that could be, even though the quarterback situation's gone and the offense might not move as well, I think Breece Hall has got the looking of being a very good running back. And even if it maybe has a slow first couple of weeks, after that, he'll probably take off. He seems to be the main one. Michael Carter did okay last year, but Breece Hall seems to have a lot more talent than Michael Carter, so I think he could be a good pickup sort of later on in this sort of draft.
And moving over, let's go to Detroit. Hard Knocks. You guys been watching that?
Oh, I love it. I know it doesn't start over here in the UK until Friday, but it's the internet. Come on, we've seen it. But yeah, absolutely love it. I'm loving Dan Campbell. He's just so intense. His speeches in front of it, like some of them just go off on a tangent and don't really make too much sense, but you're still sitting there thinking, I'd run through a brick wall for that guy. It's the one he was talking about. If you see light at the end of the tunnel, there's no light. Metallica once sang a song saying, if you see light at the end of the tunnel, that's a freight train coming right towards you. And then it just went on to something completely different to what he's just said.
It is. It's so intense, isn't it? It's when you see all these speeches, when you see some of the... And what I liked is that there was like crowds in watching, or there's the media and stuff in watching, and he's not holding back one bit. He is absolutely screaming at his players. And I love the coaches kind of going at each other, the competitive edge in it. I thought it was... I know some of that can be done for the cameras, but it looked pretty genuine. Steve-O, you had a chance to kind of watch it yet?
I watched the first episode. As you said, like listen to Dan Campbell's just brilliant. Just you can tell his passion for it, and I think you've seen that last year a bit with the Lions, where they didn't have much talent, but they were fighting in every game, and it just seems like that. If you've got a coach like that, that's what he does for you. And you see he's in there for it with all of them, because even when he was doing the up downs, and he was like just joining in like rather than watching. I mean, I can remember like Kieran being our coach, and I don't remember him joining in much when we were playing old soccer.
I could see that coming a mile away.
I've seen him go down. I don't know about up.
No, keep it clean.
Having him there, doing that and showing that makes a big difference. And as you said, seeing that like the offensive and defensive coordinators going at each other, it then gets the players built up and going for it.
Aye.
And I think with Dan Campbell as well, the fact he just went straight in for pads and helmets and just going straight at it, as he said, it might have surprised a few of them, but it got them going and knowing where they are now and where they need to work on. So it seemed to work so far.
The amount of fights and stuff in between them was incredible. I know it's not proper fights, but they're going for each other, aren't they, Kieran? Had you watched anything like that along those lines, or did it kind of catch you? Was that what you expected to see?
I did expect it because, like Steve touched on there, like they're training how they play.
Yeah.
And you said about the pads and stuff. They're setting up an environment in which they are training like they play, and it is intense. And he's seen, I don't know what the actual wording for it is, but he's seen Jamal Williams take the huddle. And he gave off the speech of, if you're going piss like a puppy, stay on the porch and let the big dogs eat. I absolutely love that. Imagine saying that in Scotland. Something along the lines, if you're going to piss like a wee dog, but let the big dog stay on the veranda. Fuck, I don't know where I'm going with this. Nah, but
you're right. Like I think it's an American thing. I think they just train the way they play. I think it's in all sports. It's like they come in there to work. Like it's like here. I think you see even at the top level, you see videos of training. It doesn't quite give that impression. They're still quite. I know it gets intense right at the top level. I know that they train well, work hard and stuff. But the Americans are just a different level. They just come in. And it's just intense to start. And as you said, through the sort of training camps there, it's dog eat dog. They're fighting for like their place in the squad or their place in the starting lineup. It's intense.
Yeah, and they're very clear about that. But I'm just thinking, you spent, 6 years playing soccer in America? Like, you must have come across some intense coaches that gave you some speeches you were sitting shaking your head at.
So, my coach, Blair, like, top guy, and some of his speeches were just, there was some that were quite inspirational and there were others that you were trying not to laugh, but they always had the right idea. He'd always talk about setting the tone and all that before games, which was good. But there was one day and he had us doing sort of one-on-ones, so it was like he split the squad up. You just pick somebody to go against, you just dribble each other, try and tackle each other, like try and score in a tiny goal, and it gets quite intense. You're going at each other, and he said he was talking about how he loves, like, if a new guy, a freshman, would go up to a junior or senior starter, and they'd pick them. He's like, I love that. He's like, it's like you're saying, you're the big dog. There's only one big dog here, and it's this cat in front of all the pups. And we couldn't, because he switched cats and dogs, we couldn't stop laughing. But his point was class. But we had loads of ones like that, but it's just Americans for you. It's just they just are intense. And I've got to say, I loved it. All the American guys we had, they were like that. They were just all about business when they came in. They'd work their arses off. And it's good to see that in the documentaries. I think a lot of it transfers over to British sport as well now. I think it's becoming a lot like that.
Yeah, it's getting like that. And I liked how they focused on the first round pick, Aiden Hutchesons. One thing I took for it was that week 15 versus the Jets is going to be interesting. His mum is going to be in the same building as Zach Wilson.
Yep.
I'd be telling her to stay at home.
Dangerous, isn't it?
Oh, the MILF hunter. He'll be prowling. But nah, I loved his initiation. And then I've actually seen this week's episode 2. Once again, nothing illegal or anything about it. Of course it is. But nah, it does a sort of Michael Jackson celebration and stuff. And one of the highlights for this week, without me spoiling it, and you guys are obviously going to watch it after me with this. I'm planting the seed, right? There's a good part where Amon-Ra St. Brown's in the gym with his brother and his dad. And his dad's actually a 2-time Mr. Universe. His dad gives a speech about Kevin Durant, about how he's never done calf raises and ended up with like an Achilles injury. And like, he's just talking a power. But I couldn't help but be reminded of Uncle Elroy from next Friday. See when you're watching it. Just think of Uncle Elroy.
But I mean, these documentaries, all joke aside, these documentaries are great. They give you an insight. Steve-O, you enjoy them? They're all across all sports. I think one advantage of them is if you don't have a team in any sport, you might watch that and that might become your... Is there any you've been watching a lot of them across the sports? How do you think they can compare? Do you think it's something that's... I know it's coming in English football. Do you see it as something that's going to continue to grow?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing now with all the social media stuff and all that, everything's out there anyway, so they may as well like sort of keep it in-house and do it properly. But you see it, and that's when you're seeing the football ones, like they say the English football and all that, and there's like a couple of wee scuffles and all that, and everything's it's amazing. Then, as you say, you see the American football ones, and that's just normal kind of play. But it definitely is building. And even sports I've not really watched that much. You get ones like basketball ones, I've never really watched basketball that much, but watching all the basketball stuff and all that, it gets you into it and gets you following. Exactly. I think this year with the Lions, you're going to have that wee bit of a soft spot and you're going to be watching out for them a bit more than what you would usually do. And like you said about Jamal Williams, like he's just shot right up my draft board after that speech. It's like, yeah, just players like that, you know, he wants to win, he wants to do it. And if he gets a chance, he'll show it. So like things like that, it does get you involved.
It's the same with things like Last Chance U. I mean, that was guys you'd obviously never heard of, community college guys. And now sometimes you hear like on podcasts or stuff, or you hear about, oh, he was in Last Chance U and he's now in the NFL. And then you remember back to watching him. I think it just gives you such a outlook on every level of sport.
It puts a spotlight on these guys, giving them that sort of platform where it is their last chance. But there was an interesting thing, I know we talk about other sports, I know it'll be popular in America as well, the Sunderland Till I Die series. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of the others because it wasn't that polished sort of final product where it was a bit Hollywood. And I heard someone on TalkSport, I think it was one of the producers or one of the guys who sold the idea to basically make a programme like this. And the reason why they picked Sunderland was, I think they offered Man City, and the producers were kind of like, well, they're just going to romp the league. We've seen this before. There's no real story there. And then they suggested one of the teams that had just come up from the Championship, and they were kind of like, there's a good chance they're going to go down again. So they knocked that back as well. So they said, right, Sunderland have just been relegated. They've got massive following. They're going to keep a lot of their players for the Premier League, and there's a good chance they're going to go up again. So it's going to be like a Rising Phoenix style story. So they were all for it, like, right, okay, this is going to build up to fairy tale ending. They're going to go up, big celebrations will finish it off. That first season they went into the Championship, they get relegated, and Sunderland had signed off all editorial rights, so they had no say in what was shown whatsoever. I think that's what makes it so good, that you get to see absolutely everything, and they've really not got a say in what gets cut out.
I was going to say that. I'm quite enjoying the Arsenal one just now, and I like how Arteta, he's like, see the idea before the Liverpool game, I don't know if you guys have watched it, but he plays You'll Never Walk Alone in the speakers at training, and it sounds a cringy idea and it doesn't work, and I like how that wasn't cut out. It's just like, and as well, he's not afraid to try different things. You see properly what they're doing every day, rather than just, cut that bit out, that didn't work, so don't show it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Steve will just ask me to play that at training, but that was a straight no.
Next up the show, we're going to really help you on your fantasy football picks. We're going to go through a player from each team and see if they're going to be boom or bust in fantasy. Kieran, you want to take us away in this section?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a wee think, and I thought we would try, like you say, to help everyone. Picked 32 players here, one from every team in the NFL, which you might be dithering on your draft board and where to pick them, and in our words, if they're boom or they're bust, how we think it's going to pan out for them in fantasy football this season. So we've come up with a player from each team who really gets you sitting on the fence of where they're going to go. So with our reasoning, we are the best amateur experts for fantasy football that you'll find. So
And Steve-O.
So I'll kick us off with the Arizona Cardinals, and it's tight end Zach Ertz. I'm going to go boom for Zach Ertz, that he's going to have a good season. Tight end depth in fantasy is always an issue, and I think with Ertz it could be a steady pickup late on in drafts. There's no Christian Kirk, there's no Chase Edmonds, Hopkins suspended for at least the first 6 games, so there's going to be targets to go around. Zach Ertz had a good end this season last year when he was traded over to the Cardinals, so there's no reason he won't carry that on, so that's why he's boom for me.
I was going to say the same, Kieran. I've got him down as boom with the same reason you spoke about. Hopkins being suspended means he'll see a lot of action early part. One of the top tight ends. I said you don't pick that right away, so it is hard to come by on tight ends once you get to that spell. I'm going to go with boom as well.
For Atlanta Falcons, Cordell Patterson. For me, a lot of people like him, but I've actually been surprised people by saying this might be a bust. He had a poor end to the season last year. He's got Mariota coming in at quarterback who likes to run the ball a bit, and we don't know how they'll be. You'll get Tyler Algier coming in, who, from what I've heard in camp and stuff, is doing well. So he might get some points, but I just think overall, compared to what he was last season, I think he might be a bit of a bust.
I'm going to agree with that, with bust. I think on top of that, I think his age, I think you'd see him used a bit less, so I'm going to go with bust. I would avoid him. Okay,
I'm looking towards the Baltimore Ravens now. Rashad Bateman. Okay, I'm going to go boom. He's set to fill the shoes of Marquise Brown and be Jackson's number 1 target. He's been unlucky with injury last year, but his best years are ahead of him. Injury to Lamar Jackson last year and others seem to halt the Ravens' progress, and they'll want to keep Lamar Jackson as healthy as possible. So I'm actually expecting Lamar Jackson to throw the ball a lot more this year, aside from his trademark running. So for me, Rashad Bateman is boom.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Kieran. I think, as you say, with Holloway away, it's basically him and Andrews as the passing offence, and with that, I mean, Andrews is great, but they'll need someone else. I think Bateman's the one that's going to step up.
Next on to me, Buffalo Bills, Gabe Davis. I'm going to go with boom. I think this could be his proper breakout season. He's moving into a starter position with one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, and me and many others favour the Buffalo Bills for the Super Bowl, so boom for me.
100% agree with you. Boom for me. One of the biggest sleepers in the draft. Expect him to finish the season in one of the best teams in the NFL as the wide receiver 1. His latest season form last year proved that his trajectory is going upwards, while Dow's trajectory is on the slide. His ADP at the moment is number 71, and you'll be laughing if you get him late in the 5th, early in the 6th. Boom for me, absolutely.
Next up, going Carolina Panthers and Christian McCaffrey. For me, it's a boom. I know a lot of people have been burned by him the last 2 years, and it is very fitness dependent, but if he's fit, he's the sort of guy that could win you a league. When he is fit, and he's PPR especially, he catches a lot. And because I think there was a couple of games last year when he was 1st and 5th, and he didn't even have a touchdown at running back. So that just shows you how much he gets PPR through catches. So I think that's a boom, but it's a big if he stays fit.
For the very last part, you said it's a big if. I'm going to go, this is one I've toyed with a lot. I can see his qualities, but because of those injuries, I'm going to go a bust on that one.
The soft spot for me, Chicago Bears, I like them. Justin Fields in at quarterback this year. Deliberating as well, but it's a bust for me. So much hype around Fields in fantasy last season. Never really proved it when he got his chance. Maybe I'm being a wee bit premature considering it was his rookie year, but he's got a poor receiving core round about him. No doubt Darnell Mooney's going to have a good season given the targets he's going to see, but The injury news around N'Keal Harry's now out for an extended period. They're going to struggle. Could be another long year for Fields and the Bears, but don't expect to see Fields drafted in 100% of leagues.
No, I've got to agree with you, Kieran. I think he's got talent, but he's not really been given any sort of supporting staff, as you said, with Mooney. But they've not worked on the offensive line during the draft. They've not given him targets during the draft. And although Matt Nagy's away and it might help him, I just don't think it'll be enough.
Next for me, Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins. I'm going to go with Boom here. He finished the season strongly, and although he won't be the main man, I think he could provide some value if he falls to you a wee bit later in the pick. So I'm going to go with Boom there.
I'm going to disagree. Bust for me. The experts have got him tipped to be big time this season, but this amateur doesn't see it. He may go on to have a good season, but in fantasy terms, I don't see him being the rock star that everyone's making him out to be. He's amongst one of the most talented receiving corps in the NFL. He'll most likely split targets every week with Jamar Chase and also Tyler Boyd. He averaged less than 10 targets last season, and this number may not improve. So it's bust for me.
Next up, the Cleveland Browns, and it's Amari Cooper. Now, for me, it's a bust. And we kind of covered it earlier on with the DeShaun Watson chat, but the fact that we don't exactly know who the quarterback's going to be, I think last year Cooper was already on a bit of decline when he was at the Cowboys, and that's why they've kind of let him go and moved on. So for me, I just can't see anything but a bust.
Totally agree there, Steve-O. I had him down as Boom until the news came with DeShaun Watson. I think it all hinged on my notes, put all hinged on that. I think just the quarterback situations, I think you've got to say it's bust now.
CD Lamb, Boom for me. Who else are they going to throw to? Mari Cooper's gone. Washington's out. Gallup injured, so we're not really sure when we're going to see him coming back. I read a stat, and I think I mentioned it last week, with Cooper gone and Washington out, that there was something like 180 targets up for grabs. So most of them are going to come the way of CD Lamb. If you can get him early doors, or maybe 56th round, I think you'd be absolutely laughing. I don't think you'll get him 56th round. I think you'll go early given the stats. But Dak Prescott in behind him. Expect a big year from CD Lamb.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one. I've got him down as Boom. Like Dak Prescott, I think Cowboys will do well this season, and he's going to be the main man. He'll see a lot more action this season. So I think you've got to say Boom on that one.
What you're saying is don't be sheepish if you get the chance to draft them.
I'll not pull the wool over your eyes.
Right, next up, it's Denver Broncos and Cortland Sutton. For me, it's an easy Boom. I've got Danger Russ Wilson in there now, which will make a big difference. Sutton showed flashes last year with not much thrown to him, so getting Russell Wilson in there is a big sign for him. And adding to that, the Tim Patrick injury kind of pushes him up a wee bit more. Basically, him and Jerry Jeudy are the main two, and I think he'll be the main target, so definitely a Boom for me.
Totally agree. Boom for me. Major upgrade at quarterback with Rusty Wilson in there, so Boom for me.
Moving on, I'm going to say DeAndre Swift here at the Detroit Lions. Boom. Easy one. Don't know if it's a Hard Knocks hype or the fact he's had an outstanding 2021 season. Considering how poor the Lions were last year, he shared a lot of reps with Jamal Williams, still produced good fantasy numbers. I expect the Lions to improve this year. I don't think they can be much worse than last year, but they're a team on the up, so DeAndre Swift is in to have a good year, so it's Boom for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Kieran. I think he is a PPR machine. He's a pass catching back. Jared Goff, not the best quarterback, so there'll be a lot of wee dump offs here and there, and that's where he'll get his points. But as you say, you've seen some Hard Knocks, and he already looks like he's right up for it. So he's another one that has some injury problems, but fitness, definitely, if he stays fit, he's a Boom for me.
Next up, Packers, Alan Lazard. This one was quite easy for me. Boom. He's a wide receiver one now. It's an opportunity to prove himself by a gap in the offence, and he's playing with one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Boom for me.
Yeah, totally agree. And a lot of the same reasons as you've got. There's no Valdez Scantling, there's no Devontae Adams. Rodgers has already been very public in saying he's not been happy with the rookie wide receivers in camp already. I fully expect Lazard to see the Lions share of targets, and it could be a big year for him alongside the reigning MVP. all media points to him being the wide receiver 1 as well, which is very important. So if you can get Lazard in that sort of dead zone wide receiver range in your draft, go for it, get right in there. He's going to have a massive year and he's going to win people leagues.
Next up, Davis Mills, quarterback of the Houston Texans. For me, it's a bust. I like Davis Mills. I think he kind of came from nowhere last year and was very solid. But apart from Brandon Cooks, he's not got much weapons there. So I think he'll do well, but just not in a fantasy league. Unless you're in like some sort of 2 quarterback league, then I can't see anybody drafting him.
Totally agree. Bust for me. I think we spoke last week about quarterbacks being more relevant, and I just think we've got a lot stronger quarterback options out in the league. So bust for me.
One quarterback to another. Matt Ryan at the Indianapolis Colts now. It's boom. He's an upgrade. He's an upgrade from the Texans. Ryan's now got a stronger O-line in front of him. And with a wide receiver, I've already tipped to finish top 5 this season in wide receiver for fantasy, Michael Pittman Jr. Let's not forget, he's got Jonathan Taylor next to him. Matt Ryan might have had a poor season last year, but he'll bounce back. Sleepy dark horse the Colts as well. So, yeah, boom all day for me.
I'm going to agree with you. I think he's a boom. He's not one of my first picks as quarterback, but I think he's a solid enough pick. So for that reason, I'll put him in the boom category.
Right, next up, Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Jacksonville Jaguars. He was a big money free agent signing, but I think he'll be a bust. I can't trust any sort of Jags receivers. They've always been players there that seem to have some talent in that, but fantasy-wise, it never seems to kind of come to anything. The offense isn't great, and Trevor Lawrence might improve this year, but I just can't trust it.
I'm going to go boom. I'm going to take a punt on him. I think he showed flashes before. It's his big move. I think it's a big season for him. I'm going to go boom.
So we're talking wide receivers again. Another move in the summer. Juju Smith-Schuster to the Kansas City Chiefs. Very good move for him, but I'm going to go bust on this one. I do like Juju, but I don't think he's a guy who you could rely on in your fantasy week to week, especially at the Chiefs. It's going to be wide receiver, and it's going to be a committee. He's going to share targets with guys like Travis Kelce, Sky Moore, Valdez-Scantling, and his attitude was always questionable at the Steelers. Like Steve said with Amari Cooper, kind of being ushered out at the Cowboys, I feel the same about Juju. Like this podcast as well, he's pretty focused on his TikTok account. Make sure to follow us, the link's in the description.
No, I've got to agree with you. I think obviously Kelsey's the number one easily, and then the rest, as you say, MVS, Sky Moore's maybe doing really well in camp. We've still got Merkel Hardman there. He always seems to be about without doing too much, but Mahomes will spread that out, so I just can't see Juju being very relevant fantasy wise.
Next up for me, it's the Las Vegas Raiders, Hunter Renfrew. I'm going to go boom for this one. I think he doesn't probably get the credit he deserves. I think he deserves more respect. I think he'll put up good numbers this year. I think he's worth a go, especially if your strategy is sort of go for running backs first and then he falls at you. I think he's a good one to get on board.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I'm going to go boom on Renfrew. Actually seen in his picture on the app, he's got hair now, so I don't know if that helps or anything. Anyway, I'm all over the Raiders this year. It's going to be a big year for them. People tipping them to do well. Renfrew's a big part of that. He's seen over 120 targets last season, which might lessen with the arrival of Adams, but he always seems to produce. Expect double-digit touchdowns for a well-placed wide receiver and wide receiver 3 in your fantasy team. I can't see him being your 1 or 2, but he'll produce numbers as your wide receiver 3.
I'm going to bite my tongue and not make any hair jokes we used to.
Easy on.
Right, moving swiftly on. Next up, LA Chargers and Mike Williams. For me, this is a boom. I had him in my team last year. I think we had a wee trade going, Kieran, and I managed to get him off early. He started really well, fell a wee bit, and was a bit inconsistent. But I think that offense is just going to get better and better. Justin Herbert's just top notch. He's got his new deal, and I think the consistency levels will go up. Keenan Allen will get a lot of kind of passes and safe passes, but I think Mike Williams is the one that's going to get you big plays. So he's definitely a boom for me.
Got to agree, no much more I can add to that. I think he's going to have a big season. Boom.
LA Rams, another Super Bowl favourite across in LA. Allen Robinson, and I'm going to surprise a few people here and say bust. I'm not sure if I made comments in previous podcasts saying that he's going to have a very good season, but when I look deeper into it, I believe it's going to be a bust. Very good landing spot for Robinson, but I just don't see it. Cup's always going to be the wide receiver one there. Injury played last season. He only got 38 catches and 1 touchdown from 66 targets, which is very poor numbers regardless of who you play for. So I'm just not buying it. He's a bust for me.
I'll go against you. I think he will be a boom. Last season was shocking for him, to be fair, but new offence under Matty Stafford. Cooper Kupp is number one by far, but I think OBJ showed last year that there is room for someone else to be there as well and take over that second role. And I think based on where you'll get him and the value you'll get, I think it'll be a boom for me.
Next one, we're down at my Dolphins. Now this one is going to divide opinion. It's Tua, and I'm not sure if I'm thinking on my heart or my head here, but I'm going to go boom. I think it's a massive season for him. I think he's going to have a much improved Dolphins side. You know how I feel about the cheetah. I just think this is his time to make his mark, and I'm going to back him. I majorly have been on the fence with this one, but I'm going to back him and say boom.
I think that's definitely your heart rolling your head there. I think it'll be a bust. I think he's definitely got the weapons with Cheetah and Waddle. And I think they'll do well, Dolphins. I think he'll do all right, but just I don't think he's got enough to be like good enough fantasy-wise. As you said before, there's a lot of decent quarterbacks out there, and I just don't think Tua will be one of them.
Hard to disagree there. Anyway, moving on, Minnesota Vikings, Adam Thielen, a name very well known to everybody who's ever watched the NFL or played fantasy. Bust for me. Mother time's catching up with Thielen. He's 32 now. It could be his last chance to regain form of previous years, but Justin Jefferson's the number one there. That won't change at all. I wouldn't go drafting Thielen in the first 5 rounds. ADP suggests 73, which I feel is quite accurate for Thielen. He's coming back from ankle surgery as well. It's a bust all day for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. As you kind of covered it all, so he's on decline. Jefferson's going to be a beast this year, and I think KJ Osborne will kind of come into it a wee bit more as well. He showed a wee bit of promise last year, so I think he'll be more prominent in the offence and kind of Thielen will fall away a wee bit.
Next up for me, New England Patriots, Damien Harris. For me, I'm going to go bust here. I think he's got a bit of a crowded offence, and I think for that reason, his numbers, I don't see him posting great numbers. I think you've got better options in there. Bust.
Hard to disagree. I'm going bust as well, and I think a lot of folk will disagree with us on this one, Shug, but I had him last season, ended up trading him away. I expected so much more and they didn't produce. In a Bill Belichick offence, the ball seems to get shared around all over the field to keep the defence guessing. So for me, Harris is a bust. Suggestions are he could share reps with Ramondre Stevenson. So, nah, not at all for me. It's a bust.
Right, next up, my New Orleans Saints and Michael Thomas. Obviously, as you tell with the discussions earlier on, I definitely think this will be a boom. Once again, the main issue has been fitness, but when he's been on the park, he's been a machine. Obviously, he's going from Drew Brees to Jameis Winston from the last time he was relevant, but I think the value you're getting for him and where he's dropping to, it's an easy pick for me.
I agree, good value. He's off the pup list and ready to go game one, so I think he could be in for a good season. And as Steve said, good value on that side. Boom.
From Steve-O's team to mine, New York Giants, Saquon Barkley. It's boom. Of course it is. He plays for my team. Been played with injury the past 2 seasons. Barkley now has to prove himself to earn that deal and extension at the Giants. He's looked back to himself in training camp, and it looks like he may see some more targets as a pass-catching running back under Brian Daboll, which makes him even more valuable in full PPR leagues and fantasy. Take him in the first, and you won't regret it.
No, I've got to agree. He's going to be their main weapon, I think, this year. As you say, with Daboll coming in, he's not got much competition for Matt Breida, I have to say. So I think he is definitely a boom. I'd be hoping that he drops to me in the second as a second pick, but he's definitely a boom for me.
Next up for me, New York Jets, and a guy we spoke about earlier, Zach Wilson. It's a tough one for me, but I'm going to go bust for the kind of reason we spoke about earlier. I think he'll miss the very start of the season. Can he get up to speed while the injuries continue to haunt him? I do think they are a talented team. I do think there's a chance that'll come back to bite me. But for me, I've got to, if you ask me to stick my neck in the line just now, it is bust.
I think we're on the same page tonight. I'm bust as well. Given he's already undergone surgery in the pre-season on his knee, due to miss a short spell, I wouldn't go drafting Wilson as your QB1 this year. Possibly your QB2 if you play in the single quarterback leagues. But the Jets may well be the breakout team this season. Plenty around about him, but I struggle to see him staying healthy the full season given his history and knee issues. It's a bust for me.
Next up, Philadelphia Eagles and Devonta Smith, the wide receiver. I was right on the fence for this one. I think he's a great player, and that's why I'm going boom, because that offense will be good. The rest were obviously AJ Brown's coming in. They were run heavy last year, but I think this year, with AJ coming in, Hurts will be a bit more confident in his throwing, and I think Devonta Smith will get a lot of targets. So for me, it'll be a boom.
I went similar. I think it'll be good value, and I think you'll see more consistency from him this year. Boom for me.
Yeah, so moving from the Eagles across to the Steelers, and we're going to talk Chase Claypool. For me, it's bust. I think it won't be long until we see him drop to WR3 in the Steelers' offense this season. He's got all the talent and serves as a deep ball dependent wide receiver, but Deontay Johnson will serve as a wide receiver 1, and all the talk coming out of camp surrounds George Pickens. I wouldn't go reaching for Claypool. Maybe late on in your draft, but he's going to be wide receiver 3 there in no time.
No, I've got to agree with you. Definitely a bust. I mean, you've got this sort of quarterback uncertainty. Is it going to be Trubisky? I don't think he wasn't great last season. I had high hopes from last season, and he just didn't really show up. And as you say, I think George Pickens is going to build into that team and become take over his role. So no, I agree, it was a bust.
Next up for me, it's the San Francisco 49ers and Trey Lance. I'm going to go, we spoke about it on previous pods, I'm going to go boom here. I'm confident he'll step up, he's trusted, and I think he'll lead the 49ers to a good season and he'll post good numbers himself.
Yeah, boom, I'm all over him this year. I think he's going to serve as a very good QB1 for folk, and I have no doubts about drafting him. He's got targets like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. It'll be hard for Lance not to have options to throw to, as well as the fact he can get around the field with his legs. It could prove to be a very, very valuable pickup if you opt to draft a QB late in your draft. And I can see similarities here with the quarterback situation now that they've come out and openly said that he's going to be the QB1. It reminds me slightly of when Patrick Mahomes took over from Alex Smith at the Chiefs. They knew their guy. You can trust the opinion of Kyle Shanahan.
Right. Next up, staying in the NFC West, Seattle Seahawks and Tyler Lockett. For me, it hurts me to say because I've always been a big fan of him, and he has always been boom or bust because he'll have weeks where he would win you weeks and then he'd have weeks with absolutely 0 points in fantasy. But now it's definitely a bust for me. The QB downgrade, going for Russell Wilson to Drew Lock or Geno Smith, it's just no way I can see him being a boom. That might change if Jimmy Garoppolo goes there, but based on the quarterbacks I've got, I can't see anything other than a bust for me.
Got to agree with you there, bust for me. I've always liked taking a couple of players from the Seahawks, but I don't see any value in taking any of them. As things stand, I don't really see any fantasy value in any Seahawks players. So it's a bust for me.
Moving from the Seahawks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're looking at the big money wide receiver for them this season, Russell Gage. It's boom. This has actually been a tough one to call for me, but I expect Gage to see Godwin's targets given the injury that he's had. He'll serve as a solid wide receiver too for the Bucs. Evans will probably get all the red zone targets from Brady, but Gage is an extremely good late pickup with his ADP currently 114. Seen him go later on in drafts. I think he's going to give a lot of value at that position in drafts.
I don't disagree with you. I think obviously Goodwin's injury plays a lot, and if he comes back sooner, it may affect it. But as you say, for the value you're getting for him and the way Brady is with his wide receivers, it's got to be a boom. I don't think Julio Jones coming in will make too much difference to him. So I'd definitely say boom as well.
Next up for me, Tennessee Titans, Robert Woods, Sheriff Woody. Boom for me. Reliable, steady performer. Will post decent numbers, I think, this season. Going to go boom on that side.
I'm going to go bust. I think the first time we're off the same wavelength here. Despite the Titans having a really good season last year, if I'm right in saying they won their conference, the departure of Julio Jones, I'm just not sure I can see Woods putting outstanding fantasy numbers up. The Titans will be run heavy with Derrick Henry. I wouldn't go drafting Woods earlier than the 7th round, so nah, bust for me.
And last but not least, it's Washington Commanders and running back Antonio Gibson. For me, this is a bust. I found last year he was very inconsistent, and this year they brought back McKissick, they drafted Robinson, and even in the first pre-season game there, he still had his fumbling issues. And the last thing that came out was basically he was working from with the punt team in the sort of third string. So that might be just because of his fumbling, but I just can't see it this season at all. So bust for me.
Bust for me, and I'm simply going to say dog meat player, dog meat team. I'll be nowhere near the Washington Commanders at any point during this year. No time for them at all.
The Washington dog meat. And that wraps us up for the 32 teams. Hopefully we've helped folk. Hopefully we've probably swayed them the other way. There was still some disagreement, so yeah, hopefully we've helped some people with that, Shug.
Definitely. I think you're still on the fence at some guys. It was difficult to pick between boom or bust if you're kind of seeing the value, but it's not really your top pick. So some of them you're just kind of taking a punt on. But hopefully we've gave some of the listeners a wee bit of help of what to do or what not to do in their draft pick. Hopefully it's gave us a chance to reflect on a few as well. Steve-O, you've been a fantastic guest. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been good fun.
Good. And Kieran, as always, superb. I'll be giving the keys back to you next week to get back in the hot seat, take the pressure off myself.
Yeah, you can keep them if you want, but a great job as ever. Steve-O's been a great guest, very insightful. And yeah, we'll see whose boomer bus get clipped up at the end of the season. There's bound to be one of us are completely wrong. But yeah, it's been a good laugh as ever.
As always. Well, guys, thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you next week.